BPOs, they're grabbing how many square meters per building, and how usually do the office developers design or strategize their supply of units around the BPO factor?
Yeah, I mean, the BPO sector is the main driver. Most developers do design their buildings with BPOs in mind, because that's where 98% of the end users are coming from.
98%.
Something like that, maybe a little bit on the high side. But,
And usually how many square meters do they get?
BPOs typically like a large sort of open floor plan. So a smaller BPO might take one floor of 1,500 square meters, but the bigger BPOs take up to about 10,000 and even more square meters. So if you're taking that sort of space, you don't want to be on too many floors. So a floor plate of 1,500 square meters or more is ideal.
And the big ones, the big players, Accenture, Convergys, and all,
yeah.
they want to be in different buildings for securities, they said.
Well, there's that, but it's more to do with their clients' requirements, where they would like to be, but also where the labour pool is. I think the location of these call centres these days, anyway, is driven. Of course, real estate prices are important, but frankly, real estate prices in the provincial areas aren't a lot different to the CBD in the National Capital Region. It's more a question of an abundant labour supply. So that's why places like Davao, Bacolod, Iloilo, and Cebu, more recently Davao, these are becoming very popular because of the abundant potential labour pool.
Labor supply,
Yes.
and then the real estate supply.
Yeah, so
They come together.
The two go together, that's right. But
right.
it's really, the labour is the key issue. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, that's why the BPOs are here, because of their savings on labour costs, which are probably only 25 or 30% what they'd be paying in the US.
Would you say that because our office real estate market is driven by BPOs, our developers here have different strategies in, in designing or in planning their offices here compared to other countries? You've been into Indonesia. How do they design their office buildings?
Well, I mean, in Indonesia, when I was there, the BPO sector, the industry hadn't really got going. And when, in fact, whilst I was away, when I left the Philippines in 2001, I hadn't heard of the BPO industry. It was only when I came back in 2005 that this phenomenon had happened. In Indonesia, that wasn't the case. Buildings are very large in Indonesia. They have large, if not as large, if not larger, floor plates. But the market there is driven by the oil and gas industry. So you have a lot of big, Exxons and Shells and BPs and whatever occupying large amounts of floor space. But here it's more the BPO sector, the large space users.
Okay, and do they design their buildings differently? Like here, I noticed that most of the offices have elevators, for example, designed for the high traffic.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's very important, particularly if it's a medium to high-rise building, and most of your tenants are in the BPO area. The waiting time for the elevator can be a serious concern.
And that's not a concern in Indonesia, for example?
Well, because those offices didn't employ such vast numbers of people. The space, the square meters per person was a lot more. So whereas here it's sort of 6 square meters per person, so you're getting a lot of people into these offices. And if you have contiguous floors occupied by BPOs, then you're quite a build-up of traffic.
We have some questions from social media. We have one from @Ayalo. Where is the best place to invest in the Philippines? The upcoming areas, and would it be better to invest in commercial or residential units?
Well, it's easier to invest in residential. As far as upcoming areas are concerned, the capital region, of course, is expensive, relatively expensive. But I think you've got to look at where the infrastructure is going, and there's a lot of new roads planned going down to Cavite and up to Bulacan in the north. So I think the sensible thing to do, if you don't want to pay too much, is to look at those areas that will surely emerge over the next 3 to 5 years as the LRT lines expand and the roads, the expressways grow. So they're the areas that you should look at.
So we should tell Aya to look out for those announcements by the government as to where the rail lines, roads,
look where the LRT
airports.
one's going. Exactly, the new airport. We don't know where that may be in Clark, but there's talk of another airport somewhere nearby.
Okay, another question from the same Ayalo. We're seeing a lot of high-end property coming up, like Trump Tower, Azure Residences. Is there enough demand?
Well, apparently yes, because Trump Tower is 80% sold. It was only launched just over a year ago, and it's comparatively expensive. I mean, it's about 180,000 pesos per square meter.
Yes.
So it's beyond the reach of most ordinary mortals. But they are 80% committed. So,
who are the buyers of
well,
these?
I guess a lot would be professional overseas workers, but well-to-do families here in the Philippines who already have their house in Forbes or Dasmariñas Village and are looking perhaps to buy condo units for the children. I think the Trump Tower has captured the imagination. It's been well marketed and
And the branding does help.
the branding certainly helps, yes. As Century Properties would vouch for that.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, they only account for like 3% of the market.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question from Cool Kideko. Can new business districts like Quezon City compete with Makati and Ortigas? Because Ayala Land has just said that they have a new central business district coming up in Quezon City.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, traditionally there was
60 billion, if I remember it
yeah,
right.
yeah, in the food terminal they're developing down in the south. But yes, I mean, traditionally there was Makati, then there was Ortigas, and more recently Fort Bonifacio. So you've got the three main CBDs. But as space gets limited and prices go up a little bit, end users need to look to other areas. So you've now got about 19 emerging business districts within the NCR. Quezon City, Mandaluyong, the Bay City area.
Mandaluyong. There will be more in Mandaluyong.
There's more in Mandaluyong.
Okay,
yes,
and then the
yeah.
Taguig, as you mentioned.
And Taguig,
That's
yes.
the 24
and then,
billion.
You've got the Bonifacio Global City, you've got McKinley Hill, and as you go further south, you've got the new FTI development, 74
Right.
hectares, which Ayala are going to do.
But we've been talking about Fort Bonifacio for the past decade. So how soon do we start talking about a booming Quezon City Central Business District? or Taguig?
It's happening already. I mean, there's already lots of development plans within Quezon City, both along EDSA and along the C5. Lots of developments planned. So I think you'll see over the next 5 years quite a lot happening in Quezon City.
Well, the government did. They mentioned that the earnings of these big developers have jumped twofold over the couple of months, which actually goes back to our discussion on the impact or the contribution of the real estate industry to the Philippine economy.
Yes.
Do you have any last words? We're reaching the last few minutes of our show.
No, I think I'm generally upbeat about what's happening, and we predict the BPO industry will certainly grow. As I said earlier, I think the residential sector, certainly in the medium term, is looking very promising. Another interesting factor, though, we're also getting interest. The Philippines is getting interest from non-BPO users. In 1995 to 97, we were leasing offices to banks, financial institutions, smaller floor areas, but they made up the entire user demand. We are now seeing those banks and financial institutions coming back into the fray.
Really?
So
Okay.
it's not just BPOs. We're getting an additional maybe 50 to 70,000 square meter per annum demand from the traditional office sector.
Well, they do say that real estate is a vote of confidence
Yeah.
or doubt on the Philippine economy.
Yes.
So now